into effect on June the 1st, 2020. A little more than a month on, the Act, which introduces corporate liability for corruption offences, will hold a commercial organisation accountable if any person associated with it commits a corrupt act to retain business or even gain an advantage for the commercial organisation. Now, this amendment in particular has a serious impact and repercussions for companies, business entities and individual players if breached. So today we have joining with us via Skype Raymond Ram, who's Managing Principal with Grey Matter Forensic Advisory. Hi Raymond, so just to get right into it, what is Section 17A of the MACC Amendment Act 2018 in a nutshell?
Hi Tam, and thank you for having me. All right, so the MACC Act, or the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission Act 2009 was always focused on individuals. Now, all eyes was on the amendment made in 2018 when inclusion of a new section known as Section 17 capital A, which now criminalizes commercial organizations for actions perpetrated by persons associated to that organization, whether it's giving, promising to give, or any form of gratification in order to either obtain business or to retain some kind of favor in a commercial nature, right?
Right. So in a nutshell, also, Raymond, moving on, looking at the fact that we're right now in the COVID-19 recovery period, and there is a lot of competition amongst companies, particularly to get juicy tenders going so that business can pick up again. How important is it going to be, this act in particular, in addressing and ensuring that corruption doesn't occur on a company level?
Yeah, okay, so the 2018 amendment was done 2 years back, and it was given 2 years to companies to prepare with proper procedures and to put up a proper anti-bribery management system in order to deter their staff from committing acts of bribery, right? So given these 2 years, now looking at the condition of COVID-19 and how companies are going to be struggling to attain tenders, to attain projects, and so like, I believe it's very timely that we have this. Not only would companies, the staff, be now liable personally for actions of bribery and corruption, the senior management directors and the company as a whole would be held liable for the action of their staff. And of course, as a fraud examiner myself, it is in these times where fraud manifests itself, when everyone struggles to retain, struggles to carry on, to sustain businesses as they go along. So definitely this is a timely act, timely enforcement of the Section 7 capital A, and we hope that organizations will move towards implementing these internal controls to deter such acts from taking place. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So it is an unprecedented act that has been brought into force since June the 1st, 2020. Now, Raymond, on the flip side, how is this actually going to fall in with the government's plan to also increase investors' confidence in Malaysia and, of course, Malaysian businesses and organizations?
Very good question, actually, because we had the NACP, the National Anti-Corruption Plan that was put in place. And part of that plan was to hold legal persons or companies liable for actions of their staff. And when I put it this way, here we could see that even our CPI, or Corruption Perception Index, has increased at a quite significant manner, where we went up 10 spots from the last year compared to this year. So we can see that this enforcement of laws and proper policies and procedures put in place will boost investor confidence. It will now move towards the aim of making Malaysia look as a country of integrity instead of a country prone to having corrupt acts being perpetrated, as many cases have shown in the past. Right?
That's right. So moving into how can companies, directors and senior management also defend themselves adequately in court if they are charged under this section, Raymond?
Yeah, so under Section 17 capital A, under subsection 5, we have something known as the Adequate Procedures Defense. Now, the Ministerial Guidelines for Adequate Procedures was released by the Prime Minister's Department in late 2018. And part of these guidelines, it has been utterly mentioned that all companies must have five principles practiced in place. First, having proper tone at the top, or proper top-level commitment. Second, conducting risk assessment to ensure that your high-risk functions are properly assessed and properly monitored and supervised. Secondly, we have having systematic controls to be put in place, followed by undertaking monitoring measures by the senior management, by those in charge of compliance, risk, and lastly, they must have proper training and communication done. When we say training, all staff must be aware of their internal anti-bribery policies. And notwithstanding that, external parties should also be aware of the anti-bribery policies being practiced by that organization. Because when we look at persons associated, it's not only persons within the company that commit acts of bribery that will fall liable towards the director senior management, but the acts of external parties acting on behalf of the company will also be assessed in a way. I mean, will also create a burden and liability towards the staff and senior management and directors of that particular company that appointed them in the first place, right?
That's right.
So
But at
those
the
is
same
the gist
time
of
now,
the five principles. Yes.
yes, but Raymond, at the same time now, companies are not going to be able to abscond from their responsibility, be it their own employees directly or even contractors or those who claim to be representing them. So what is your advice to company management in particular across the country in light of this exacerbated risk of liability when it comes to all business transactions right now?
Because, I mean, as we spoke with the MACC, I mean, the first thing is this. If a company is charged under Section 17 capital A, or the corporate liability provision that we spoke about, there's two things that their directors need to prove. Number one, they need to prove that they were not part of the crime. They were not abetting the bribery act itself. And secondly, they must prove that they have put in place proper adequate procedures, proper policies, controls, monitoring systems to ensure that they reduce the risk of bribery or corruption taking place within the organization. So you must be able to prove these two defenses. If you can see on cases that has taken place outside of Malaysia, even the UK or the US, it falls back to whether you had those policy procedures in place, whether you have enforced those policy procedures in place, not only whether you have committed the act of bribery or been part of the scheme at large. Yeah.
Right. Raymond, thank you so much for that brilliant nutshell. Also actually getting in contact with all the companies out there who do need to be practicing more according to what the MACC's latest education has for them. Now moving on from there. Yesterday, His Majesty, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, made a surprise visit to the Flood Relief Centre at Sekolah Kebangsaan